how our hero used to get bullied by the other kids. And he felt all alone in a dark, messy place. At that moment, the protagonist would just hang his head, surrounded by shadows representing the bullies. These shadowy figures would stare him down with malicious glares all the time. But a brave kid showed up and landed a punch on one of the aggressors to defend his friend. The young, orange-haired boy yells at them to stop spreading rumors and to get lost. Our hero gets all emotional and starts to cry, seeing that someone finally stood up for him. His classmate comforts him and promises that next time, he'll protect him from the bullies again. With a smile on his face, the protagonist agrees, feeling happy to have a real friend. As they walk together, the protagonist thought he'd be safe as long as his bro, Bing, was around. However, in the blink of an eye, the two boys' hands ended up slipping apart. Suddenly, our hero realizes something strange has happened. The shadows that used to haunt him now seem to be surrounding his best friend. He asks where Bing is going as he watches him slowly fade away. His friend turns around with a confident smile and says that as long as it's him, everything will turn out okay. He screams in desperation, begging Bing to come back, but his friend vanishes completely into the darkness. Just then, our hero wakes up, startled and in a cold sweat, realizing it was all just a nightmare. Still panting, the protagonist sits up in bed, trying to recover from the bad dream he just had. Then he remembers that in middle school, he had a condition that gave him perfect recall and insane analytical skills. Because of it, his body control skyrocketed, but the trade-off was suffering from splitting headaches. The hospitals couldn't find the cause, but his mom brought him some special medicine that got the condition under control. His aunt then calls out to him, letting him know a package has arrived and that he needs to get ready for breakfast. The protagonist replies that he's on his way as he slowly gets out of bed, still drowsy. But lately he feels like the medicine's effect is wearing off as his body has built up a tolerance. As he leaves his room, a young woman tells him she'll take him to buy some new clothes later. Our young man agrees and then grabs the package that was in the shoe cabinet near the door. He examines the package but finds it weird that there's no return address on the box. In that instant, our guy feels a shiver down his spine and senses that something really bad is about to happen. Suddenly, the older woman smacks him and threatens to break his legs. She adds that at her age, she doesn't make empty threats and she'll definitely follow through. The other young woman hugs him and says he's 20 years old and needs some nice dating clothes. But the older lady isn't buying it and says she knows the two of them are plotting something against her. The girl then complains that her mom should be worried about her brother, not her love life. Seizing the opportunity, our hero uses the confusion to sneak off and open his package in peace. With the box in his hands, our guy opens it to see what's inside. He then finds a black card with a cool texture and figures it must be from some high-end club. Without giving it much thought, our guy slips the object into his pocket to check out later. Besides the card, he also finds a yellow envelope inside the mysterious package. It was a letter from Bing, saying he'd found something life-changing and that this was a gift. The protagonist gets annoyed at receiving something so sketchy from a friend who's been ghosting him for so long. With his phone in hand, he decides to call his buddy to demand an explanation about the package. But to his surprise, the person who answers the call isn't his friend, but his friend's dad. The protagonist gets awkward and greets Miss Lay, stammering a bit from the nerves. In a serious voice, the older man calls him by his name, making the vibe super tense. And then Bing's father reveals that he's at his son's school, because he has simply disappeared. Shocked, the protagonist hears that Bing vanished 3 days ago from his dorm room without a trace. His roommate said he was talking to the guy, and when he turned back around, he was just gone. Our hero finds it impossible for someone to just disappear like that and wonders if his friend was kidnapped. He then calms Mr. Lay down and says he'll ask his grandfather and his cousin from the security agency for help. After the call, the protagonist hangs up the phone to think more clearly about everything. He starts piecing together the clues: the disappearance, the package, the letter, and the strange black card. At that moment, the young man searches his pocket for the card, but, to his surprise, finds nothing. Eyes wide, he realizes the object has vanished from his pocket without any explanation. Leaning on his desk, he tries to connect the black card with Jiangnan province. With all the stress, his head starts to hurt, and he reaches for the bottle of painkillers. The pain is so intense that the protagonist has to pinch the bridge of his nose and lean on the desk to keep from passing out. His mind then processes all the information at once: the letter, the disappearance, and his grandfather's words. He remembers the letter saying his friend couldn't control the power, but that he could. Echo in his mind, and the stress causes his nose to start bleeding. With trembling hands, our hero takes out the 2 pills that help him control his condition. He takes the medicine, and his aunt interrupts him, announcing that investigators from the security agency are looking for him. At this, our hero turns around surprised, as he wasn't expecting a visit from the agency. He finds it to be a huge coincidence that people from his cousin's department would show up right now. While his grandmother defends him, The protagonist says he's coming, and that it's just a routine questioning. Before leaving his room, he quickly deletes the call log from Bing on his cell phone. His grandmother informs him that she checked their IDs and they really are from the district security agency. The old lady warns him not to do anything suspicious, but he denies everything with a sheepish grin. When he gets to the door, he sees two investigators and assumes they must be his cousin's colleagues. The protagonist then introduces himself and asks them to come in so they can talk more comfortably. The man asks if he knows Lei Yibing, and the protagonist confirms they're childhood friends. As he invites them to sit, he finds the visitors' lack of formality a bit strange. Everyone settles in the living room, and the lead investigator thanks the young man for his hospitality. The agent reveals that Bing has vanished, and that on the morning of his disappearance, he sent a package to our hero. The protagonist pretends to be shocked by the news while one of the agents pressures him for an answer. With a serious expression, the protagonist remains silent for a moment before replying. Our hero confirms he received the package but says there was no return address, so he didn't know who it was from, saying the box was completely empty and had nothing inside. The protagonist justifies it by saying there was only a packing cushion and figures that since the card vanished, he technically wasn't lying. Since he was the last person to have contact with Bing, the agent asks to inspect his room, computer, and phone. The protagonist thinks for a moment and agrees, figuring this would be a good way to prove his innocence. With that, he allows the investigators to start searching through his things for the investigation. The pink-haired agent then approaches and asks our hero to hand over his cell phone. He gets all flustered and hesitates to give the device to the woman, who just stares at him, confused. Embarrassed, the protagonist says he has study materials on it, but she assures him she'll only look at what's necessary. To avoid looking suspicious, our hero asks more about the case while his grandmother serves the agent tea. The investigator explains that Bing vanished from his room, and that a classmate saw him sleeping just before he disappeared. The protagonist notices the story is the same and suspects the agent isn't telling him everything. The man warns him to notify them immediately if he finds any clues and not to hide anything. And then the investigator threatens him, saying that if he doesn't cooperate, he might be the next one to go missing. Annoyed by the threat, the protagonist thanks him for the warning with a forced smile. The protagonist sits in the living room, a bit dazed after that tense conversation. Just then, the pink-haired agent approaches and informs him they're done checking all his things. She then shoots him a mischievous look with a little smirk on her face, which leaves the protagonist quite intrigued. His face turning bright red, our hero realizes she definitely saw all the embarrassing stuff on his phone. The lead investigator hands over his card and asks them to contact him if anything new comes up. At the door, the young man asks them to let him know if they have any news about his missing friend. After they leave, his grandmother worries about the disappearance, but the protagonist says he's going to lie down because his head hurts. He also asks them to tell his other aunt to call Mr. Lei as soon as she gets home. She agrees as we see a shot of the apartment building where he lives. Luxury cars are parked where the investigators are waiting. Inside the vehicle, the agent sips on some wine and asks his partner if she found anything useful. With a twinkle in her eye, the woman replies that she did and that she made a very important discovery. With a serious expression and a piercing gaze, the investigator tells her to just spit it out already. She reveals that the kid's phone had a ton of hidden folders with some creative names. Hearing this, the agent gets furious and seems to not have appreciated his partner's little joke at all. The woman then reveals that the protagonist is a loner who's only into video games and girls in tights. Loses his patience and tells her to stop being a pervert, as her habit has no class. But she just calls him a buzzkill, saying a little joke helps lighten the tense mood. Then she reveals that Bing's letter was hidden, and that he most certainly received a character card. The investigator falls silent for a moment, processing the new information he just received. With a thoughtful look, the man gets comfortable and sighs in the car seat. And with a smirk, he decides to check back tomorrow, assuming the kid hasn't gone missing too. Night begins to fall over the city as the sun sets on the horizon. Back in his room, the protagonist is on his computer, thinking about everything that happened. He guesses that Bing's disappearance was planned, and that the real target was the mysterious black card. With this, he believes the security agency isn't the only one that knew about the object. The protagonist thinks the best thing to do is tell his cousin everything, but he doesn't know if he can trust the agents. Suddenly, he starts to panic because he can't contact his cousin, nor can he explain the vanishing card. While freaking out, our hero hears someone calling his name from the other side of his bedroom door. It was his blue-haired cousin who storms in, complaining that he's ignoring her on purpose. With that, the girl complains that he isn't answering and wonders if the things she bought for him were a waste. With a serious expression, our hero seems to completely ignore his cousin's yelling. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain in his head and hunches over in his chair, trying to endure it. The woman asks if he's going to do something about their aunt, but he only feels the pain getting worse. Our hero stays silent for a moment, just feeling his head burn with pain. His grandmother then appears and tells the girl not to bother him, as he went to bed early with a headache. The girl replies that her date was fine, but she didn't like the guy because he made way too much money. While our hero is alone in his room, staring out the window with a blank expression. His eyes then open, revealing a strange and mysterious glow in his pupils. Looking in the mirror, the young man is startled to see a strange black moon pattern on his forehead. At that, a progress bar appears on his forehead, marking 90%, leaving him confused. He then realizes it's the same pattern from the black card and wonders what will happen at 100%. A vision shows that the card didn't disappear, but actually entered his body and became the mark on his forehead. He concludes that the card was a gift from Bing to change his life, and that's why he was being targeted. And in that instant, the progress bar on his forehead hits 99%. Our hero then despairs, wondering why the progress bar stopped at 99%. At that moment, a system screen appears, announcing that the card initialization is complete. With this, he realizes it looks a lot like the game, like systems from the web novels he used to read. The screen then prompts the young man to choose a name for his character immediately. The protagonist tries to interact with the system, but is disappointed to see his intelligence stat is way too low. Without much thought, he types in his own name, but the system stops him with a big red warning. Surprised, the protagonist understands he can't use his real name to register in the system. With a determined look, he thinks of a new alternative for his player name. The name is accepted, and the system announces that the spiritual realm will open for him in 10 seconds. Confused, our hero stares at the screen, not understanding what this spiritual realm that's about to open is. 10-second countdown then starts to appear right in front of him. The numbers continue to decrease rapidly, heightening the tension of the moment for the young man. With the countdown reaches its end, and a bright light flashes. The spiritual realm map loads, and he discovers the difficulty is S rank in solo mode. His first mission is to survive for 3 hours, but he can't bring any items from the real world. Suddenly, our hero opens his eyes and finds himself in a completely dark and unknown place. With that, he slowly opens his hand, trying to get a feel for the environment and understand what's happening. The protagonist clenches his fist tightly, trying to get used to his body in this new reality. Looking at the dark cave, the young man wonders where on earth he could have ended up now. Just then, the system screen pops up and explains he is in one of the 10 urban legends of High City. The system screen pops up with the local lore, talking about a construction crew that vanished in a mysterious tunnel. A survivor was found, but he'd lost his mind. In his eye, we see the reflection of a warning that repeated endlessly. The warning message was crystal clear, saying not to enter the temple, which made our guy even more on edge about the place. With that, our guy looks around the dark and gloomy place, not quite understanding where he ended up after the bright flash of light. At that moment, sweat drips down his face, showing just how nervous and freaked out he is by this whole bizarre situation. He then realizes he's inside a tunnel and immediately wonders if it's the same one from the creepy story he just read on the system screen. Forward, not exactly thrilled about it. Our young man tries to calm himself down, saying this can't be the real tunnel because it looks much older and more worn down. But his body is trembling uncontrollably as he struggles to get his thoughts straight and remember all the mission details. He figures he's been pulled into some supernatural event and now has to complete the missions he was given. Survive for 3 hours. Explore the spirit realm. Means this tunnel is super dangerous and he needs to be careful. However, he remembers that every mission comes with a reward and that his class is a Night Wanderer god, which perks him up a little. He concludes that the class must be a reward and remembers Bing's warning that the card would change his life forever. He notices the lights lit up on the cave wall. Looking toward the end of the tunnel, the lights on the wall suddenly go out. All of a sudden, a noise grabs his attention, and a shadowy figure appears in front of him, scaring the daylights out of him. He's frozen in fear as the tall, strange creature slowly shuffles toward him, dragging its feet. Up close, the creature's feet are gnarly and look like they're decaying. The young man then notices the creature is wearing a worker's uniform and realizes he's one of the missing construction workers from the story. Its face is terrifying, looking like a skull with a macabre grin, making it pretty clear he's not friendly. To make matters worse, it wasn't just one, but a whole group of zombie workers that now surround our guy. Our MC goes into full-blown panic mode, seeing that horde of creatures coming his way with absolutely no chance of escape. He turns to run but realizes he's cornered, and the horde of creatures keeps advancing relentlessly. The creature's hands are skeletal and have sharp claws, ready to tear anything apart. One of the gullish workers lunges forward with its mouth open, ready to attack our trapped protagonist. Our guy finds an opening and makes a desperate run for it, but he notices something strange and wonders why they aren't following him. In the reflection of his eye, he sees that the horde of creatures has stopped moving and is just watching him from a distance. With a calmer expression, he turns around and sees that the creatures have not only stopped but seem to be looking at something. To his surprise, he discovers there's another group of ghoulish workers right behind him, leaving him completely surrounded. Just then, one of the monsters points in his direction as if giving an order to the others, which confuses him even more. With that, the monsters just stand there on either side of the tunnel, not attacking our guy, who's stuck in the middle with no way out. He wonders about the monster's gesture and realizes it's pointing toward a dark temple. The ancient building looks abandoned, and a creepy creaking sound echoes from it, making everything even more tense. And it feels like something pretty terrifying is watching him. Without hesitation, our guy takes a step forward and decides to head in the direction the monsters pointed. He then starts running for his life, trying to get away from those creepy creatures. He continues down a dirt path, trying to escape that bizarre place. The path leads him out of the narrow tunnel and into a giant cavern with an exit. He wonders why the creatures didn't attack him, since the mission was about survival. He's confused because he doesn't get why they let him go and even showed him the way. He realizes the gesture was a trap, and that if he had stayed put, he would have been attacked with no chance to defend himself. Determined to get away from the danger, he runs toward the forest. As he runs, our MC notices a strange silence. Not even the insects are making a sound. Even with a bad feeling, he keeps running down the dark trail, not knowing what's waiting for him. Suddenly, our young man stops running when he feels like he stepped on something weird on the forest floor. Tired and confused, he looks down, not really understanding what's happening around him. Looking up, he's startled to see a giant spiderweb stretched between the trees. He also finds a broken wooden structure. Finally, our protagonist reaches his destination and finds the ruins of an ancient temple. Our young man is shocked to realize the place is the same temple from the warning he received. He remembers the alert message that clearly said not to enter that place under any circumstances. However, he knows he's already out of the tunnel, so his mission now is to explore this abandoned temple. The guy then wonders if the worker's intention was to guide him right into this trap. In despair, he understands that the missions are connected, and he has to survive for 3 hours inside the temple. He starts to panic, knowing that turning back is impossible and moving forward is dangerous. The warning said not to enter, but the mission requires him to explore the place, leaving him with no choice. With no other option, he decides that to survive, he has to face the danger and enter the temple. So he cautiously steps into the dark, abandoned place, not knowing what to expect. As soon as he's inside, he spots a light coming from the main building and is intrigued by the discovery. Suddenly, a noise in the tall grass catches his attention, putting him on high alert. Startled, he quickly turns toward the sound and wonders what's approaching. The sound continues, and the grass rustles more and more, indicating something is coming his way. He stops, and looking back, he wonders if he heard something. Is affixed on the grass, suspecting something is there. RMC thinks that the first step to finding ghosts is usually a sound illusion. Right after, the sound of footsteps gets louder, and footprints appear out of nowhere on the dark ground. This sends him into a panic, as he wasn't expecting to find something so creepy here. In complete desperation, he runs for the temple, screaming that he's never done anything wrong to anyone. He looks back and sees the mysterious footprints are still following him closely. Without a second thought, he decides to enter the main building to escape the invisible creature. With a burst of energy, he throws himself against the door. The force of the impact pushes the door open, making him stumble inside. Our guy then plants onto the wooden floor right after getting through the temple entrance. Exhausted, he sits on the floor to catch his breath after all the running and the scare. Looking back, he sees the silent night and the moon illuminating the temple courtyard. The protagonist is now sitting inside the lit hall, seemingly safe for the time being. Our young man then realizes the sound of footsteps has completely vanished, which is a relief. He wipes the sweat from his face and wonders if he's finally safe inside this place. Looking forward, he discovers the light is coming from candles placed on a bizarre skull. Looking toward the back of the hall, he sees creepy statues and a giant figure in the center. The stone figures on the side are of women with unsettling smiles on their faces. It makes him uncomfortable as he feels like one of the statues is staring intently at him. Up close, the main statue appears to be a goddess with a serious gaze and a mark on her face. Our protagonist gets closer and is impressed by the immense size of the entire structure. Our guy stays silent for a moment, just observing the massive statue in front of him. He then notices the goddess's hand and imagines she should be holding something, which could be a clue. Looking to the side, he spots something at the base of the statue that catches his eye. He thinks he's found a stone tablet that might contain important information about the temple. The inscription reveals that the temple was built over 500 years ago. Our protagonist is surprised by the discovery, as he hadn't imagined the real age of the place. Suddenly, a bad feeling washes over him as the environment around him seems to grow darker. Our young man's gaze is then drawn to the candles, where he sees a strange reflection on the tablet. In the reflection, a bizarre face with a hole in the middle appears, scaring him quite a bit. At that moment, one of the candles on the altar starts to flicker strangely, heightening the tension. He tries to figure out if the place was born from a legend or if the legend was born because of the place. He then decides that to get out of there alive, he needs to find more clues about the temple's mysteries. Our guy is tense, but he decides to take action. He crouches down to get a closer look at it. On the floor is a completely decomposed body. Our MC then goes back to the body and notices that despite the broken bones, there's something hidden in its pocket. Carefully, he pulls out a yellowed piece of paper with some writing in red. The paper is a diary entry that talks about the mysterious disappearance of 3 monks from the temple. The diary continues, saying that the temple master knew something, but just told everyone to keep praying. 3 days later, 3 more people vanished, and the diary's author had a bad feeling. He noticed his older brother was acting strangely and seemed to have discovered something. But the older brother also disappeared, and the young monk went desperately to talk to the temple master. The master then called him for a talk and promised to reveal an ancient secret about the temple. The entry ends with the diary's author eagerly waiting for sunset for the big reveal. Our guy is confused, realizing the diary's story ends right at this crucial part. He understands this note is the clue the worker left for him to find the source of the problem. To complete the mission, he decides he needs to explore the temple and face the dangers head on. The young man remembers that in the legend, one worker survived, so he decides to go out and look for more clues. As he opens the door, he realizes there's no sound outside, and the creature seems to be gone. He breathes a sigh of relief for a moment, as the immediate danger seems to have passed. Despite the relief, he feels a dangerous aura coming from outside the temple. The protagonist then takes one last look at the altar with the lit candles at the back of the hall. He knows that just standing around waiting for time to pass isn't the best option for survival. With that, our young man takes the first step out of the main hall and into the courtyard. He then decides he needs to make a choice and explore the dark ruins under the starry sky. Our guy walks cautiously through the stone courtyard, which is completely overgrown with weeds. The cracked walls of the temple create a creepy atmosphere around him in the dark night. Seen from above, the temple complex looks like a dark and completely abandoned maze. Even though he's scared, he remains determined to find a way out of that place. He then moves through the tall grass toward a dark passage between the buildings. As he passes through the vegetation, our young man comes across a pile of the workers' bodies. The guy realizes that even after seeing so many bodies, the scene is still terrifying. He analyzes the skeletons and notes despite severe injuries, some bones are intact. Suddenly, our protagonist hears faint whispers asking for help, which freaks him out. The pleas for help seem to be coming from a giant tree at the back of the temple courtyard. In a panic, our MC starts to cry and yells that he's the one who needs help, not the other way around. This time, he's sure he heard someone asking for help and remembers a certain brother Bing. He promises that if he survives, he's going to send all his homework to some nerd named Lei Shushu, outside in that bizarre darkness. He approaches a skeleton and notices that it's completely intact. Our guy notes that only this one and the one in the main hall had broken shoulder bones. Then he notices something strange and finds an object hidden in the pocket of the skeleton's clothes. Upon taking out the object, he sees that it's a small diary, a talisman, and a bronze mirror. He holds the items and tries to figure out what each of them is for in this place. Suddenly, a system notification pops up, saying he's found a spiritual item. The screen describes the talisman as a single, use item for sealing dark creatures. He realizes the diary and the mirror didn't trigger the system, so the talisman must be special. With this new information, our MC feels more confident about facing the dangers of the temple. Before doing anything, he decides to read the diary to see if he can find any more clues. The diary pages are filled with notes and strange drawings about the temple. Reading the notes, he realizes this diary also talks about the history of the place. The diary says an apprentice disappeared and came back, well, not alive, saying not to trust the temple master. Our guy is confused because the page is torn, and he wonders what that means. With the scary discovery, he feels a shiver and decides he needs to get out of there. The young man then picks up the bronze mirror he found earlier to take a look. Our protagonist notices the object looks old and doesn't reflect anything on its surface. But suddenly, his eyes go wide with pure terror at what he sees in the mirror. In the reflection, a ghoulish and terrifying figure appears right behind our guy. Terrified by the apparition, our MC lets out a scream of complete desperation. He then remembers the talisman and uses it against the creature in an attempt to protect himself. The young man throws himself to the ground and, in a panic, starts begging for his life, apologizing. Our guy looks at the mirror and wonders if the talisman actually worked. Unfortunately for him, the item doesn't work, as the creature isn't the type that can be sealed. He feels his strength fading and regrets leaving the main hall to explore. He then figures he's about to join the other skeletons in this gloomy place. Suddenly, the protagonist hears a strange noise coming from the darkness of the courtyard. He recognizes the sound of the footsteps of the creature that chased him in the main hall. Angrily, the young man says that if he becomes a ghost, he's going to haunt all the monsters. Our protagonist hides and, through a window, observes a red light glowing in the darkness of the courtyard. The mysterious light seems to be coming from a tree as the sound of footsteps keeps getting closer. At that moment, a pair of red high-heeled shoes appears, walking by themselves through the courtyard. The floating shoes pass right in front of the window where our guy is hiding, terrified. He covers his mouth in shock, finding the combination of an ancient temple and Western shoes bizarre. Very carefully, he continues to watch the red shoes move away through the courtyard. He's tense and breaking out in a cold sweat as the shoes continue on their mysterious path. After the shoes disappear from view, he finally lets out a sigh of relief. However, the piece is short-lived as the bronze mirror in his hand starts to shake. With the ghost still behind him, he wonders if there's any hope for him. The ghost latches onto him in a way that he can't break free. He heads toward the temple to escape the ghost that's stuck to his back like a leech. With his last ounce of strength, our guy manages to reach the door of the main hall. After entering the temple and now thrown to the floor, he starts gasping for air. The ghost has vanished from him like smoke. He then realizes his theory was right, and that hall was indeed a safe room. With that, the phantom pain in his shoulder begins to slowly fade away. Our MC then thinks that if the two monsters had attacked him together, he'd be a goner by now. He remembers the rule from horror games and gets up to securely close the hall door. Suddenly, a system notification pops up saying the first main mission has been completed. Our guy is shocked to see that he survived for 3 hours and completed the objective. He gets a talisman 15% experience and 36 hours of rest. At that moment, our protagonist looks at his shadow and is confused by its energy-like form. In the blink of an eye, the young man is transported back to his room, much to his surprise. He looks around and confirms that he's really back in his room, safe and sound. Our MC throws himself onto his bed and takes a deep breath, happy to be alive. Back in his bed, our MC notices that the talisman he earned has disappeared. He then opens the system screen and sees that his inventory is completely empty. He concentrates and the items tab appears with the talisman inside it as a reward. Our guy realizes this all feels like a game and wonders about his level 0 status. With this situation in mind, he decides he needs to tell the investigator from before everything immediately. The protagonist remembers the investigator's warning not to hide anything from him. He thinks that if he told a regular investigator, he'd be called crazy or a sleepwalker. The young man connects his cousin's disappearance with the spirit realm and decides to call the number on the card. The call is answered, and an unknown voice asks who's on the other end. Our MC introduces himself, and the man on the other end of the line recognizes him, saying he got out of the spirit realm. The young man is surprised, and the voice congratulates him on becoming a spirit realm traveler. The man explains that they're the same type, but he's co-official, and our guy is a wild one. He then explains that the government has two options: absorb and train, or just monitor. Without a second thought, our protagonist agrees to join the organization to protect the country. The man then tells him to rest and that he'll pick him up at 8 in the morning the next day. Our MC then apologizes for hiding the card, and the man on the other end praises his caution. With everything settled, the night passes peacefully in the city as our guy rests. Then the next day, the sun rises, bringing a new morning for our protagonist. He wakes up starving and leaves his room to talk to his grandma about food. He then remembers he didn't sleep a wink, as he had nightmares about the monsters all night. His grandma asks why he woke up so early, and the blue-haired girl starts teasing him. She says she's going to check our guy's trash can to see if he had a little fun last night. Ignoring the girl, our MC walks over to his grandpa, who is sitting peacefully on the couch. The young man asks his grandpa about an old case of a worker who disappeared in a tunnel. The grandpa says he doesn't remember, but the young man insists, and his grandma scolds him for not brushing his teeth. Suddenly, his grandma remembers that the worker who was found ended up disappearing again. The grandparents start arguing, and the grandma tells our guy to go brush his teeth. Our MC is shocked and realizes that the worker didn't survive his second mission. Brushing his teeth, he concludes that joining the organization was the best decision for survival. With his decision made, our young man finishes getting ready for the day ahead. He then rushes out of the house with food in his mouth, saying he's late while his grandma scolds him. His grandpa seems to notice something different about the protagonist, but decides not to comment. Then we see a fancy limousine parked on the street, waiting for our young man. The protagonist peeks from behind a brick wall, watching the car cautiously. At that moment, the vehicle's door opens, and the man in the suit invites him into the car. With that, our guy approaches the limo and gets into the luxury vehicle without hesitation. Once inside the car, the man asks what he wants to drink, and our MC asks for a soda. The guy then says he'll have to buy it himself, leaving the young man disappointed. The man explains that he's taking him for basic training and decides to introduce himself first. He introduces himself as Li Dong, a squad captain, and says they're now coworkers. Li Dong begins to explain that the spirit realm is a supernatural force that science can't yet fully understand. That this realm exists within our reality, but is also separate from it, and only the chosen can enter. Our MC then remembers the item he received and asks if the card is the way to be chosen to enter this world. The captain confirms, saying it's called a class card, and that it initiates a trial mission to grant a profession and skills. Li Dong warns that completing the trial is just the beginning. To get stronger, you have to accept missions and enter the spirit realm. The older man then shares that in 2 years, he only did solo missions every 3 months and barely survived. Our guy comments that it all sounds like a video game dungeon, and Li Dong likes his comparison. The captain then pours a drink and explains that solo missions have the highest fatality rate of all. With this information, the protagonist gets curious and asks why individual missions are so dangerous. The man in the suit explains that in a group, classes help each other, and skills complement one another, creating survival strategies. Our young man then thinks about his own Night God class and understands why his mission was a supernatural horror type. He then asks about his cousin, and Li Dong replies that officials already consider him gone in the spirit realm. Our MC is completely shocked by the news, and the captain explains that his cousin has been missing for too long. In complete desperation, our young man asks about higher-level missions. Li Dong replies with a serious look that he's not sure, but there are probably missions that last much longer. Our protagonist then realizes he's very weak and that his focus now should be on joining the official organization to save himself. But before talking about the organization, the captain says he has something important and asks what our young man's morality value is. The guy looks at a screen that appears in front of him and replies that his initial value is 60. Dong then explains that if this value drops below 60, a punishment system is activated. With that, his location is exposed, and a mission to eliminate our MC is sent to all members in the city. Our young man is totally shocked and wonders if he can never do anything wrong again in his life. Seeing our guy's despair, the captain starts laughing out loud at the situation. He then explains that stealing or hurting someone takes away 1 to 5 points, and more serious crimes take away 10. With a smile, he says that some moral failings don't affect the value and that he should just be a good person. He then starts thinking about all the little things he's done, wondering if they would lower his morality. Inside the car, he realizes that Li Dong didn't explain the reason for this system, and maybe not even the organization knows. The vehicle brakes sharply, and the captain announces that they've arrived at their destination. He then got out of the vehicle with Li Dong. Inside a building, Li Dong explains that accumulating points is simple, and even evil organizations do charity for it. The older man then reveals that this is the fastest way to build up morality, so they can do whatever they want later. The captain then presses the elevator button and reveals that fights between travelers don't affect morality. He introduces the 5 Elements Alliance, formed by the union of 5 great powers of the spirit realm. The elevator starts to go up, and Li Dong explains that the alliance was formed only 20 years ago. He then starts complaining about the Bahua group, saying they're a bunch of extremist, hypocritical environmentalists. The captain's anger grows as he badmouths the other factions and their shady activities. With a smug smile, Dong says that his White Tiger's faction is the only perfect one. Li Dong compares the classes to those in a game, and our MC asks if his faction is the Sentinel that costs 75 cents. Suddenly, the captain gets furious and threatens our young man, telling him to apologize right now. In this tense moment, the elevator doors open. They've arrived at their destination. Once outside, Li Dong admits that our MC's class is known as the strongest of all. Our guy is surprised and curious, so he asks the older man to explain more about his class. The captain explains that night gods have immense attack power and very strong abilities. He also mentions that this class is extremely rare and that the city's branch doesn't have a single member. Dong then sighs and says he would love to have a night god on his team. Suddenly, the captain stops walking and turns to our protagonist as if he remembered something. Dong then asks what our protagonist's class is and hopes it's not a fire master. Our guy then replies with a sheepish smile that he's a night god, or at least he thinks he is. Our protagonist stands still as Dong stares at him with a surprised expression. Dong continues to watch the young man intently, as if analyzing every detail about him. Suddenly, he grabs the MC and asks if he's really a night wanderer god, leaving our guy confused. Without even waiting for an answer, the man hugs him tightly and celebrates finally finding a night god. He then explains that people with this ability are very rare and sought after by all the spirit squads. The side character even tells a story about how a girl from another faction got involved with one of them just to recruit him. The boss asks for our MC's spirit ID, and he replies that it's Yuanshi Tianzin. At that moment, the man's expression changes completely, and he's shocked by the name the guy chose. But he quickly covers it up with a forced laugh and says it's a great name, while the young man sees right through the lie. The boss then picks up the phone and offers a salary of 20,000 a month plus bonuses and mission subsidies. Hearing the offer, our protagonist's eyes light up with dollar signs, and he accepts on the spot. The man then shows him an office and says that those female employees will be like his personal assistants for everything. After everything is settled, the boss invites him to his personal office to finalize the details of the agreement. Arriving there, he asks our young man to sit on the couch while he prepares the employment contract. He then gets comfortable on the couch and waits patiently while the older man prepares everything on the computer. Suddenly, a woman named Guanya appears at the door and asks if anyone needs help. Our guy remembers being approached by some girls earlier and gets all flustered by the situation. The boss hands a contract to the woman and asks her to give it to the new colleague, as he needs to leave. The woman then approaches our MC and jokes that he managed to pass the trial mission. The man then scolds her and tells her not to say weird things in front of the young college student. But she ignores him and plops down on the couch next to our guy, asking if he wants to know more about the trial. As he leaves, the boss comments on someone's happiness and the protagonist remains beat, red with embarrassment. The woman then tells him to forget the boss and just fill out the form and hand over his ID. Sitting in a very relaxed way, she asks if the boss has already given him the basic training. While the young man signs the contract, she warns him that his old ID can no longer be used and he'll receive a new one. RMC is confused and asks why, and she reminds him that the system told him not to use his real name. He confirms he was warned but still wants to know the reason, and the woman says there's a good reason for it. She explains that there are order professions and evil professions, and the evil ones hunt the order ones. The protagonist then asks if Guanya and Li Dong's are fake names, and she replies with a simple, maybe. Finally, she says that since they are an official organization, they are the hunters, and the young man says she must be great at it. The woman gets closer and asks about his girlfriends, and the young man, all embarrassed, replies that he's single. She's surprised he doesn't have anyone and says his trash can must be full of tissues, leaving our guy embarrassed. With a mischievous smile, his colleague offers to find him a girlfriend online. But our MC refuses the offer and says he'd prefer a real one, and the woman finds his answer amusing. Then, with a confident look, our guy says he also really likes his new coworker. Hearing this, the woman is a bit surprised by the sudden declaration the young man just made. The woman says she doesn't believe he's single, and the guy swears he can get hit by a car if he's lying. She then stops joking around and explains that in their area, there are 10 squads, and theirs now has 6 members. Our MC gets all excited and decides he's going to follow his new senior's orders from now on. The woman then takes his form and comments that she likes dealing with energetic guys. Reading the paper, she sees he's 21 years old and comments on the bold ID name he chose. Her gaze becomes fixed on a specific detail on the form the guy filled out. She then reads that his profession is Night Wanderer God and is shocked by the information. The woman remains silent for a few moments, processing the information she just read. Suddenly, the colleague stands up and asks in shock if he's really a Night Wanderer God. With a confident smile on his face and giving a thumbs up, our guy confirms that he is indeed one of them. She remembers the investigator celebrating, which makes her think she now understands his joy. The colleague gets closer and touches our guy's chin, leaving him completely embarrassed. The woman then warns him that he can't get involved with other teams, or he'll have problems with her. With a goofy grin, our MC swears his loyalty, and the colleague says she likes obedient guys like him. But upon returning to the form, she notices his level is 0, not 1 as it should be after the trial. The senior gets a confused expression and tries to understand why that information is incorrect. She then focuses her gaze on the name of the mission he completed to get into the organization. The mission's name leaves her completely shocked. With a panicked expression, she wonders how the young man ended up in that specific mission. The woman then asks about the mission, and our MC realizes something is very wrong. Our guy then says he actually wanted to ask about the trial, and if there's some kind of guide for it. Just then, a new colleague with glasses enters the room and lets out a sigh upon seeing the scene between the two. The side character keeps sighing, and our protagonist gets annoyed, telling him to knock it off. The young man panics and realizes everyone feels sorry for him because of the mission he got. She then rushes out of the office while the guy with glasses tells him not to be so scared. In the office, the guy with glasses explains that there are guides and that the organization gives rewards for them. But he says the tunnel mission is different and that the young man needs to see why with his own eyes. Then, on the computer screen, a summary of all the trial missions for Night Wanderer gods appears. RMC starts reading the missions and thinks they all seem pretty simple to complete. He notices the survival rates are high and that the hardest one is rank A, while his was S. With that, our guy keeps scrolling down the page to find the information about his own mission. He then finds the details and reads that the mission's difficulty and requirements are completely unknown. Furthermore, a warning in red says the location is dangerous and that no one has ever managed to complete the mission. Our protagonist is shocked and realizes this means no one has ever made it out of there alive. Meanwhile, elsewhere we see an office window, indicating we're in a new location. Someone is holding a glass of wine in a luxurious setting while looking at the view outside. Dong appears smoking a cigar with an air of great confidence. He relaxes in his armchair and thinks about how a rookie Night Wanderer god is perfect for his plans. The boss then calls this man and informs him that he managed to recruit a Night Wanderer for the team. The big shot smiles and says he can already see a bright future for the faction with this new acquisition. Suddenly, the woman kicks the office door open and shouts that everything went wrong, startling the boss. The big shot complains about her lack of elegance, and the woman reveals that the young man's mission was the tunnel one. Hearing this, the boss spits out all the wine he was drinking in a panic. He then stands up desperately and repeats the mission's name, unable to believe what he just heard. The big shot then leaves with her, scolding her for causing such a huge problem for their team. Arriving at the office, they find our MC sitting with a dark aura of pure depression. The young man then looks at the boss and asks with a disheartened voice if there's still any hope for him. With a long sigh and a look of defeat, the boss just hangs his head, not knowing what to say. He then grabs our guy and explains that the trial mission is the hardest challenge there is. The older man says it's the price for obtaining supernatural powers, and our young man's eyes well up with tears. The big shot warns that he's going to ask the higher-ups for help, otherwise, no one can save him from his fate. He then tells the guy to go home and wait for news, and tells the colleague to take him home. With everything settled for now, our protagonist gets ready to finally leave that office. Our guy then leaves the organization's building with his colleague. Once outside, he asks if this is the last time they'll see each other and jokes that he really is going to become a ghost. With a confident smile, the woman tells him not to worry and motions for him to get in the car. Our guy has an annoyed expression while his colleague finds the whole situation amusing. Sitting in the car, our guy keeps his head down with a very sad look on his face. The woman then pats his head and says the boss will help, but she can only wish him good luck. After saying goodbye, our protagonist doesn't seem to be giving up. Meanwhile, back at the organization's office. Inside, our MC's colleague is at her desk writing while her partner works on the computer. The woman seems very focused as she jots down some important information about the rookie. She writes down the young man's characteristics and notes that he has a high chance of being recruited by other teams. Finishing her writing, the woman then puts the pen down on the desk to organize her papers. With a sigh, she picks up the small note she just wrote. The senior then places the note in her team's personnel registration file. Afterward, she turns to her colleague and asks if he thinks our guy has any hope of surviving. The guy replies that maybe another faction has information about the tunnel, but it wouldn't help much. He says if it were easy, they would have already sent someone to get the rewards from the rank S mission. The woman comments that items are rare and that even if they gave him one, they wouldn't know which would be ideal. With a worried expression, she concludes that in the end, they would probably lose the guy and the item. The side character explains that ownerless items are only found in spirit realms or from other wanderers. But she says that's no use because if he doesn't survive, the item will be lost forever in the tunnel. Hearing this, the guy with glasses stops typing. The guy with glasses says the kid got unlucky with the timing, and the colleague just nods in silent agreement. Meanwhile, in the boss's office, we see the big shot sitting at his desk, fiddling with his phone. With a serious expression, the man with the mustache carefully reads a message he just received. On the phone, a long message explains that the rookie's mission was the Tunnel One, a bugged stage for newcomers. The sender apologizes and asks the boss to contact another faction to get information about the place. The big shot then thinks that he needs to find a way to keep the new recruit on the team at all costs. He then sends the message, reinforcing that he won't abandon a new teammate. Meanwhile, our protagonist arrives home and waits for the elevator with a very tired expression. With a sigh, the young man opens the door to his home and tells his grandma he's finally back. The old lady then appears and tells him his cousin is in the dining room waiting for him. His grandma notices he's down and asks what happened, but the guy says everything is fine. Our MC then goes to the kitchen and greets his cousin, who is sitting and eating peacefully. The relative turns around, asks why the young man was looking for him the previous night. The guy thinks that the previous problem is already solved and that his cousin can't help with the new one. But the cousin says even he can't help, and our MC despairs, laying his head on the table. Suddenly, the little fairy appears and offers the cousin some cream, saying grandma told her to buy it. The relative refuses the gift, and the small creature just gives him a mischievous smile. At this, both the cousin and our guy get looks of pure panic and despair. The grandma then smacks the older grandson on the head and complains that he doesn't take care of himself, which is why he looks older. She then tells our MC not to follow his cousin's example because he's a lost cause. The lady recalls a time when a guest thought the cousin was the grandfather's son, not his grandson. The guy gets all embarrassed while his grandma continues to complain about his sloppy appearance. His cousin then asks her to stop and says he's busy with a missing person case at work. Hearing this, our protagonist gets curious and asks his cousin what happened. The guy explains that 2 people disappeared in the tunnel, and that the cameras outside saw them go in. He then gets closer and asks the young man not to tell anyone, as it's a confidential case. Hearing this, the grandma comments that the tunnel is haunted, and that every year a few people go missing there. The little fairy gets excited and asks for more details, but the young man tells her not to get too worked up about it. Our guy thinks that if there are more people there, he won't feel so alone, but he quickly feels guilty. He then remembers that the missing people might have gone to the spirit realm and gets lost in thought. Meanwhile, in the capital, we see the entrance of a house with very traditional architecture. The sun's rays filter through the leaves of the trees. Someone is holding a yellow fan, enjoying the afternoon breeze to cool off. In the garden, an old man rests in his rocking chair while an assistant watches over him. The aide informs him that the leader of the other faction sent an important message asking for help. He explains that they recruited a rookie who got the tunnel mission, and they need information. Hearing this, the old man tightens his grip on the fan, showing a certain discomfort. The elder comments that the tunnel opens up around this time of year, and that it's impossible for anyone to get through that place. He says he can give them the data since they've already given up on it, and tells him to warn them that the place is dangerous. His advice is to abandon the rookie, as it's not worth investing in someone who's already a lost cause. The assistant just nods in agreement, accepting his superior's harsh decision without question. We then see that the tunnel is a rank S mission, and the hardest one a rookie can get. That's why the old man's faction sent 2 experienced wanderers to try and figure the place out. After a month, they got the mission and entered the tunnel to investigate all its secrets. But one of them never came back, and the other was defeated right after completing the first stage of the mission. The elder then gets up and says that because of this, they gave up on exploring the tunnel for good. But he admits that if someone manages to get through it, it will solve a big problem for his faction. With a serious expression, the big shot warns that soon the master will call everyone for a meeting. The elder then turns and tells his assistant to go and prepare for the important event that's about to happen. The aide just agrees and accepts his superior's orders without asking any questions about the meeting.
Thanks for watching. I'm going to introduce the new manhwa. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video. And if you want to see a specific manhwa, name in the comments, I will try to make it. It will take long time, but I try to make it, and see you tomorrow.